I've added a few books into our bookstore application, and the list is starting to get a little bit long. So we're going to talk about how to add pagination manually and using the Will Paginate gem. And to start things off, we're going to jump into the Rails console and take a look at the queries that we can do to pull out these pages. So by default, we're using book.all, and this pulls out every single book out of the database. And this is fine, however, it isn't going to be very efficient. And what we need to use is the SQL offset and limit methods to allow us to grab every page and then limit those pages to a certain number of results. So let's take a look at limit real quick. If we say book.limit and we say 2, then this result list is only 2 books rather than all of them. If we say 4, we get 4 books, and so on. So this means that we can set a variable in our application that says we'll always return a certain number of results. Now, let's imagine that we're going to just use 2 books per page. How we get the second page is a little bit interesting. So if we want to get the second page of 2 books per page, then we have to have an offset. So if we want to skip the first 2 books and get the second page, we can do that, and we can get books 3 and 4 as we expected. If we skip the first 4 books, we get the third page, and we get books 5 and 6. And lastly, we can get our last page if we skip the first 6 books. And that right there is the last book in the database. So this is sort of the concept for us to skip books and get the page of results, and this is the most efficient way we can do it in SQL. But we have to calculate this number for the offset. And our offset is actually the page number minus 1 times the number of results per page. So imagine that we have this one right here. So we have book limit 2 offset 4. What this means is skip the first 4 books and then get the next 2 books. So this is actually the third page. Now, this gets a little bit confusing because we have to calculate how many books we want to skip. And if we skip these books, we can say that, okay, we're on the third page, so we're going to skip the first skip the first 2 pages. So the first 2 pages worth of results is actually 2 times 2, which is 2 pages and 2 books per page. So we want to skip 4, which is how we got this offset number 4. You need to do this calculation dynamically every time that you have a user click on a page, because you need to know, okay, page 10 means we need to skip over 9 pages worth of books. That gets a little bit confusing, which is why the Will Paginate gem is fantastic for abstracting all of this math out for you. And while it's not very hard, you do have to think about it, and you don't really want to. Your application should just magically work, and no one should ever have to go tweak this unless they really need to. So let's talk about the Will Paginate gem. So Will Paginate is written by Mislav, and he's done a fantastic job of it. So the usage for this is extremely simple, which is why I recommend it. There's almost only 2 lines that you need to put into your application, and it magically works. So let's take a look at adding this. As always, rubygems.org, grab the Will Paginate line here, and we'll open up MacVim and jump into our gem file. And we'll go down here, paste it in, run bundle, and we'll restart our Rails server. And now if you take a look at this, what it says to do is to add a paginate method into your controller that queries for this. So for this page, we're on the index action of the books controller, and we'll want to open that up. So if we open up the books controller, Rather than doing .all, we can get rid of that and say .paginate, and we'll tell it the current page that we're on. So if there is no page, it knows automatically that we're on page number 1, which is great. We don't have to handle that or anything. Now, this will go and refresh the page, and we'll see that nothing changed. Now, that's fine. This is working still. It didn't crash, which is great. But if we go in here and we change the per page to 2, we can see that only 2 results show up. So this did the limit of 2, and I think the default is like 25. It might be 30. You can change it globally. You can change it per model. It allows you to do all of that. So you don't have to do the math. You can just tell it what you want. So if we go in here and we put in the page equals 2 into the URL, then we see that we get the second page of results. Page equals 3, and we get the third page of results. So this page equals 3 is a params that we're putting directly into the paginate method. So this is what is going into that directly. So you can do this, and you've got your query working properly. All of these pages work, but there's something missing. Where are the links? We haven't added those, and those are where it gets a little bit more complex to do manually, because you have to calculate the total number of pages that are there, and then you have to go through and display a bunch of links and next and previous, and then you have to calculate which page each one of those links to. And Will Paginate does all of that for you with this really, really nice little method called Will Paginate. So you just plop this in your view, and you can go into that. We'll edit anyways, and you paste it in. You change post to whatever your model is. Ours is books. And if you go back, you have pages, and it knows that there's only 4 pages, because if you didn't know that, you could have a 5th page and no results. You could put in page 5, there's no results. It doesn't really make any sense to have that printed out here. So this does the math and figures out how many pages there should be. So we can jump through all of these pages. We can go directly to a page. We can go next and previous, and that's really cool. So this gem handles a lot of the complexity, and you have to do almost nothing to add it into your application. The beauty of this is that all of the complexity of limits and offsets and generating links is handled externally for you, and there's no changes that you need to make other than telling it how many you want per page. That is really well designed, and that's what you want to write your code to be like, where it's just accepted that this works and no one has to question how it works. You never get presented with like, well, how does that work? You just know that it's going to paginate my results and it's going to put links up there. That is a sign of a really well-written gem. And one last thing before we go, there is Will Paginate Bootstrap, which allows us to integrate this a little bit better with Bootstrap. So the Ruby Gems result, we can grab that, plop it in our gem file, run bundle, restart our Rails server, and let's hop into the documentation, take a look at how we need to integrate that. So it makes a pretty Bootstrap version of the Will Paginate results, and it looks like all we have to add is the renderer into our view. So we go into books index, and we paste in renderer bootstrap pagination Rails, refresh our application, and automatically we have prettier navigation for our pagination. And that's all for this episode.